Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode. This week, I'm happy to have on a local seller, local to me anyway, and his name is Jacob Fisher. He runs the Etsy shop ReTool SF. If you're looking for it on Etsy, type in ReTool SF, or you can type in ReTool. But Jacob is my guest this week. And Jacob, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, good. So before we start, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am based in San Francisco and I make and sell stuff. And that's my sole job at the moment. So I work out of my home and spend a lot of time making and trying to figure out how to bring what I make to the masses.
Oh, nice. So you're living the dream that we all look forward to, like working, being your own boss, working from home, and then doing something that you really enjoy. How long have you been doing this?
I've had the Etsy shop since 2011. And overlapping that, I did have a full-time job for a while, a separate full-time job, I should say. But I've been doing just ReTool for the past couple years, probably. It helps that I have a savings cushion.
Yeah.
That helps.
You know, thank you so much for saying that. I think that's so important. Sometimes we get so excited to do our own thing and don't really we don't make contingent plans for in case things don't work out.
Right.
Now, before you made the leap, sorry, I know I'm going totally off script, but we're on the topic. Before you made the leap to running your business full time, when did you know it was the right time to walk away from a full-time position? I'm sure you probably had full coverage and benefits and all that. When did you know it was time to walk away?
Well, I was actually an independent contractor
Okay.
and working on one of those projects where it's supposed to be 6 months and then it turns into 2 years.
Yeah.
And a particular phase of the project was done and the company wanted to hire me full time.
Mm-hmm.
But that would have been a significant decrease in salary. So it was sort of easy.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
I have to do the same amount of work for half the pay.
I know. And the major difference is, as an independent contractor, they pay you a higher rate cash upfront, but you get no benefits because you buy that yourself, as opposed to
Right.
being an employee where they give you some benefits so they get to pay you less.
Right. The other thing for me with my independent contractor gig was I was getting paid lots and lots of overtime, which I would not have gotten had I worked with the company.
Oh.
I would have been expected to work those hours, but wouldn't have gotten paid.
Right. It just doesn't even sound appealing to have said yes to the full-time position.
Yeah, I still felt it's tough though because it's a good group of people and it's like I like the people, I want to support you, but I have other things that I can be doing.
Yeah.
That are calling to me. So
Right. Now, you don't have to say the company, but was it a creative type of job where you were doing something similar to what you're doing now, or was it in a totally different industry?
I sort of see. I like to make connections, so I'm the type of person who an outsider might say, "Well, that has nothing to do with what you do now," but I think there are sort of abstract similarities. So I was working in instructional design and developing training materials for new computer systems to train the employees on how to use them. So in a way, it's creative. It's organizing information so that people can understand it better. And
Right.
I think that the skills it takes to do that well are skills that you can use in lots of other areas.
Okay. And so while you were doing that, we haven't even talked about what you sell yet. So let's first talk about what you make and sell in your Etsy shop, ReTool. SF?
Sure. So I make and sell vegan accessories like bags and wallets, belts, straps. I like to use repurposed materials, and I use a lot of seatbelt webbing, and it's typically seatbelt webbing that is things where the width wasn't quite right or the dye lot was off. So the car companies aren't going to use them, and the material basically sits in warehouses. So rather than have it go to landfill, I'd like to turn it into something that's attractive and functional for everyday life.
Did you stumble on this? Not the making of it, but that it was going to waste.
I had been aware actually through Project Runway.
Really?
They talked a little bit about how much one season they talked about how much fabric just goes to waste that the manufacturers will just toss out because there's a small flaw that a designer working on a smaller scale can work around. So for me, if I buy a material where 10 feet of it is ruined, but there's 100 yards on a roll, I don't care that 10 feet are ruined.
Right.
I can cut around that. But I imagine if you're in like a seatbelt production facility, it would cause great problems if 10 feet every 60 yards is messed up, then you have to stop machines and you have to toss this part out. So, I was aware that there was a large amount of fabric textiles being wasted.
Oh, nice. And so then you just connected yourself with the right people to get the raw materials that you needed.
Right. And one of the things that I have found extremely frustrating is the difficulty finding supplies. Really hard. You have to do a lot of research. And for a small scale designer, you want to buy wholesale. At least my philosophy is you want to buy wholesale in wholesale quantities as quickly as you can because it makes your prices lower.
Yeah.
The problem is the quantities you have to buy in can be pretty large sometimes. So the webbing I get, the smallest quantity I can get is 100-yard rolls, and 100 yards is a lot of webbing. So you have to have a place to store it, and you have to have, at some point to be viable, you have to have something that people want to purchase, because otherwise now you're just acting as the warehouse that's holding the fabric.
Yeah. And then in your case, there's the added layer of being vegan because you specifically make products that are animal free.
Right. So no leather, no wool, no silk. And I am vegan. And so it sort of came from that and from my frustrations looking around at vegan products. And it's changing now, but it's still sort of like if you want a vegan wallet, you can have the imitation leather stuff, so that's brown or black. You can have hemp, which is beige.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of beige-ish options. So one of the things I wanted to do was come up with things that were that people would be excited about. So if your favorite colors are orange and red, then you can have an awesome orange and red vegan wallet that's not made out of cotton, so it's a little more durable. And the other thing that I was consciously thinking about was, different options like, I like to carry coins in my wallet. So if you want a vegan wallet that has coins, that needs a place to carry coins, then you're down to, 5, from 5 of your options, now you're down to 1 or 2. So just to give people more options.
Wow. I like that. And yes, the colors that you have are very vibrant. And I'd never stopped to think that as far as color options go for vegan accessories, that it was that limited. But now that you're mentioning it, I'm thinking, actually it's true. Every time I've seen a product that's, an accessory like a purse or a bag that's vegan, it's brown or it's black, or like taupe or something. Yeah. So how would you describe yourself? Do you consider yourself to be a maker or a crafter or an artist of sorts?
Yes. I think all of those things, probably primarily right now maker slash designer artist.
Oh yeah.
And I also do fine arts as well. So I draw and paint and make collages. And that's actually sort of how I got into starting ReTool, was in a roundabout way related to art, because I had been making art for quite some time and having a really difficult time mentally with trying to sell it because it's so personal. It's hard to put a price on it. And interacting with people about this personal thing that I made was also very difficult and challenging for me. So I thought, well, if I make something that I'm less personally tied to, maybe that will be easier for me and can help translate into selling art. So instead I got sidetracked, and now this is sort of my main gig, which is perfectly fine. I just have to try to find time to make art, to make the other art. So that's sort of the short version.
So Jacob, after doing this, after selling the accessories, do you think it will be easier for you now going forward when you decide to go back into selling your own art?
I hope so. And, I think that I have definitely had some mental shifts about it. I've got an art series that I'm working on that, I do have plans to get a show for. And I think that before doing the ReTool stuff, I would not have had as good an idea of how to go about doing that. So in my way of thinking everything's connected, then yeah, I think there are definitely things that I'm learning with ReTool will help me with that.
Okay. So how did you end up on Etsy? Why was Etsy your platform of choice?
Well, I had heard of Etsy, but I wasn't that familiar with it. And I started ReTool with a good friend of mine, and we were sort of trying to figure out how to do this. And we knew we wanted to sell online, and we just looked around, and it seemed like the most suitable venue. And it's changed since we started there. So we started in the beginning of 2011. We opened ReTool. So it was that was before the changes to relevancy to the search. So that was back in the days where people titled things with really super quirky titles, like Fred the Backpack. And, so it was a little quirkier. But the kind of a funny thing about it is that was always very challenging for me and my partner. So we would be like, black and white wallet, which, came in very handy for when things did shift to relevancy and it was all about describe your product.
Yeah. So for you, the change was a good thing.
Yeah, it was. In the vegan wallet area at the time, there was one particular shop that had hundreds and hundreds of listings, and every day they would renew everything. So, and because the listings were shown by recency, it would be all their stuff all the time, and the only way to find our stuff was to, dig and dig. So it definitely helped from that perspective. It made it a lot easier to get seen.
Oh, good. It's very rare that someone will actually say, "Oh, the change was good for me." I think it had it. It has its good points and all, but more often than not, you hear people say, "Oh, ever since the change," as opposed to "ever since the change." If you get my drift.
Right.
So, no, go on.
I was just going to say, I think that it's also hard if you're used to doing something some way and you understand how it works, then to have it, be completely different. It can be very daunting. You have to learn a new set of rules.
Yes. Yeah. And again, there was a new change to search. I don't know if you're familiar with if you're aware
Right.
of that. And so, again, there's another adjustment to make.
Right. And I think that's been sort of the biggest thing. It's very challenging running a shop, and I think one of the most challenging things is to always be changing things. There are tons and tons of posts on the forum about people saying, I'm doing what I've always done and it's not working. It's like, well, okay, so maybe you need to do something different.
Yeah.
And, it sounds sort of glib to say that. I don't mean it in any sort of, accusatory way or, it's your fault. But things are always changing out there, and trends change, and, search engines change, algorithms change. So you always have to be changing how you do things.
Right.
That means it's never done. There's never a point where you can just coast and be like, oh, now I can just make my thing. You always have to figure out, okay, did what I do last month, is that still working, or do I need to do something else to sell things?
Yeah, that's so true. I had to come to that realization as well too, was there isn't one fix it and forget it, because every time something changes, you have to adjust as well.
Right.
So now, how did you first become interested in making and selling accessories? Are you self-trained? Did you take courses? How did you get into this?
I'm self-trained, and I mentioned when I first started, I had a partner, and we both had jobs that we weren't in love with. So we were looking for a way to do something that we felt passionate about. So we both like to make things. So I was like, hey, why don't we make things? And he was like, oh, great. Okay. What are we going to make? And I was like, I don't know. So we came up with cases for iPhones and iPods, which in retrospect was a very, maybe not the smartest, because those are small, and I'm self-taught, and I was the one doing the making. And so it was like, so I came up with this design for an iPod case that it's kind of cool. I actually still use one of the first ones I made for my iPod. And it's got a flap. It's got a little D-ring that you put a strap through, and it closes with Velcro. It's got a little pocket in the front, and it's lined with felt. So it's this tiny case that has a lining. It has a flap. So it's got 7 or 8 different pieces. It's small, and I'm just learning how to do it. So I'm like, not the best choice in terms of, difficulty scale.
Yeah.
And then from there, wallets cropped up. And that was a much better fit, I think. Because the other thing about device cases is that every time a new model comes out, it's a different size.
Oh, yeah.
And, from different brands or different sizes. It's like, well, holy cow, you have to have all these different sizes. And so it didn't really make a lot of sense. I still make some, especially for some repeat customers I have. They'll come to me and they'll say, I just got this new phone. Can you make me a case? And I'm like, sure.
Okay.
So I do one-off custom stuff too. But yeah, so then wallets, and then it became, well, what else can I make with this webbing? So from there I started making messenger bags, and finally I thought, well, duh, I could make a belt out of it.
Yeah, a seat belt.
And yoga mat straps and things like that. So yes, I'm self-taught. I have done, I bought a couple of books that are specifically for they're for fashion design students, which are very different from books that you get like, hey, 10 handbags for you and your family. And I've done online courses through Craftsy.
Oh yeah.
And tutorials and things online. And I think, for me, skills building is a very important part of the process too, because, for me, there came a point where it's like, I want to make this thing and I don't have the skills to make it. So unless I, build those skills, then there's this whole group of things that I won't be able to make, at least not to standards that I want to make them. So one of the things when I had a partner, I one of the most valuable parts to me was really using him as an accountability partner to say, I want to build these skills, so by March, I'm going to take a class in this area, and I'm going to learn how to do this. And now that I don't have a partner, it's a little bit more challenging to be my own, driver in that way, because I don't have anyone else saying, hey, did you do that yet?
Yeah. And so before, when there were two of you, you primarily had it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, please, the creative and design, and that's what you handled. And I assume he handled more of the admin stuff, maybe doing the shipping or the Etsy Convo side. Is that kind of how you divided it up?
Kind of, sort of. I actually ran the Etsy shop as well, so he did he wrote some of the descriptions and did some of the social media stuff.
Oh, okay.
Occasional trips to the post office, keeping in touch with some of our local shops that we're in, so things like that.
Okay. So how challenging was it for you to go from having a partner in the business to doing everything yourself? And I'm asking this partly also because in the Etsy Conversations Facebook group, one of the discussions that recently came up was someone in there was considering bringing on a partner. She currently runs her Etsy shop herself. And then there's someone else who runs her shop herself and was feeling a bit overwhelmed. And I just want to talk about some of the challenges on both sides, going from 2 to 1, and then what challenges you did have with having a partner, because I'm sure it wasn't everything always just worked out perfectly well.
Right. Well, my case, I think was probably a little, to me, it feels complicated. So I'll try to do the short version, and there are definitely challenges on both sides, like you mentioned. There are pros and cons for sure. So when we started ReTool, the idea that I think we both had was that it would be a real 50-50 partnership, and we would both do everything essentially. So we'd both be making, we'd both be intimately involved in the business, and it kind of didn't work out that way. So I ended up doing the making, and some of it was because of skill level, so technical skills. And as time went on, that became more problematic because, I was getting better and better, and he hadn't developed those skills, so there was a bigger gap. So at some point it was like, oh, this is too big a gap to be able to overcome.
Right.
So let's just give up on that piece, and let's, so now we have to split things up differently. So what I thought was going to be a 50-50 partnership turned out to be more like 90-10, which is really different in terms of how you perceptually think about it, and in terms of how to get done what needs to be done. And at the end, it became very stressful because we were actually a legal entity, a partnership, which now has been dissolved, and now I'm a sole proprietor. Okay. And we were close friends, so there's that thing of like, don't go into business with a friend. Oh. And and it can be very complicated. Complications. I think the biggest thing, there are a bunch of biggest things, so big things I'll call them. Communication is super important, and making sure that everyone understands what's expected of them, and if, for me, a big thing is if you can't do something, that's fine, just tell me and I'll figure out how to get it done. But if you don't tell me, and I think it's being done, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
So, and I like to know what's going on. I like to understand how things are working and what's going on. And, so can be challenging to bring someone else in. So from now, it's like, with me running the shop alone, it's like, of course I could use help. But my struggle now is figuring out how to bring someone else in now that I've had a situation that didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
And I think there are ways that it can be done. And I think for me personally, it would just involve being very clear about, here are the 3 simple tasks that I need to have done. Mm-hmm. Let me show you how to do them. Let me watch you do them. Oh, wonderful. You're doing them exactly how I want them done.
Yeah.
Okay, go do them. Oh, you finished? Wonderful. And just being super clear about, here's the limited thing that I need for you to do. You've demonstrated expertise in it. You did it successfully. Wonderful. And then try to build on that.
Right. Do you, so do you think that would, going forward, do you think that would look more like an employee-employee relationship? I'm sorry, employer-employee relationship as opposed to a business partnership?
Possibly. I still have this dream of having a real, something that feels like a partnership where, there's an equal exchange of ideas and things like that. I would love to have that, but right now I don't know. Sorry, listeners, I don't know how to magically make that happen.
Yeah. So in your opinion, do you think it's possible to separate friendship from business? Like if you go into business with a friend, do you think it's possible to keep it strictly business when it needs to be and keep the friendship out of it when it doesn't need to be a part of it, and still be able to have, the friendship outside of business related matters?
I do. I think you just have to be diligent and honest with each other about it. But it's definitely a challenge.
So if you were to go into partnership with someone again, would you be comfortable going into partnership with someone who was more of a stranger, but very much on the same page with the vision that you have for where you want to take ReTool?
Yes, I think that is the case.
Okay. Wow. It's good to think about these things, especially when you're getting bigger and you're growing and you realize, as a one person deal,
right,
it's not working anymore. Then you have to think, do you need a partner or do you need an assistant? Do you need an employee? There are different ways to divide up the labor or things that need to get done.
Mm-hmm. The other piece that's complicated is, it can't be any stranger. It has to be someone, for me, that I get along with and want to spend time with. So.
Yeah, that's true. So when you originally opened your shop, was your goal to eventually just be your own boss and walk away, or was it more of a creative outlet for you that just turned into something more than you originally planned or thought that it would?
It was always the intention to be able to support myself through it.
And before you started selling on Etsy, because you had done some research, so you knew about it, did you have any reservations about using Etsy as your platform of choice? Did you at any point consider just starting off with your own e-commerce website and skipping the middleman platform altogether?
No, it was really Etsy's traffic that was appealing. And we were sort of a little dumb about it because we were like, oh, we'll just list it and people will buy it.
Of course. No. That's how it always works, right?
Doesn't it? Yeah. So not so much.
So when you opened your shop, do you remember about how long it took before you made your first sale?
We did one of those things where the shop was open, but we didn't have anything in it for a while. So I would say it was probably, well, it was certainly within a couple months that the first sale came.
After you listed stuff?
Probably within like a month of when we listed, but within a couple months of when the shop opened.
Okay. I did that too. I don't know why. I opened up a shop and then for like 4 months I didn't put anything in it. And I thought,
I got that, and they used to send out an email. Hi, your Etsy shop is open, but you don't have any items listed yet.
Okay, I didn't get that. I guess they don't send it out anymore. I was just so happy to have the shop up. I was like, phew, now it's there. So what does a typical day look like for you? How do you manage your time? What goes into running your business?
Well, I like to make lists, so I actually have just actually in a Word document, like a little sort of monthly calendar, and I just write things down that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
In the mornings, I typically do sort of admin-y tasks, like I'll check on the Etsy shop, I'll see, are there any convos I need to respond to? Did anything expire? Do I need to renew anything? And then so that'll be maybe a couple hours in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
or any other email correspondence I have to deal with, or ordering supplies or things like that. I like to work by natural light, and right now this is the hardest time to do that.
Yeah.
It's dark at like 4:30.
Yes.
So that sort of dictates when I work a lot of the time, is, when the light is the best. So generally, late morning through late afternoon, I'm probably doing production stuff.
Okay.
And it might be things like restocking the shop, or right now I'm prepping for shows, in-person shows.
Mm-hmm.
It might be if I feel like I'm pretty well stocked on inventory, then I might take some time to play around and come up with a new design. So that's basically that. And then evenings, I'm kind of a workaholic.
Yeah.
So in evenings I'll be like, okay, so what are the priorities for tomorrow? Things like that.
Because you run your business from home, do you find that you consciously have to make time for your own downtime, like to relax or do something that's not related to running your business?
Yes, I do. That's a big challenge for me, has sort of always been, life-work balance. And when you're working at home on your own job, your own business, it's especially challenging.
Yeah.
When I was doing independent contractor work, I was able to work at home a lot. But that is different from working on this business at home. It was easier to separate from the independent contractor job. So the other thing I have to, just make sure to, go outside and be with other people.
Yeah.
So post office runs are really good for a little bit of that.
Is that your social hour, the post office run?
Yeah. And it looks really good in your Etsy reviews. Quick shipping.
Yes. Now, how much time do you how much time do you devote to learning new skills or increasing your skill set in making as a maker?
It's really variable. I would say less specific time carved out for that now. If there's something I want to figure out, then I'll just do some research and do it. But there was a time maybe a year and a half ago where I wanted to get more proficient in bag making.
Yeah.
So I did some reading in the fashion design textbooks I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
And I did an online course.
Yeah.
And that was, I had dedicated a couple months to really focus on that. And started came up with a new bag design out of it. So at this point, I don't currently, there's nothing that I feel like I really have a desire to learn that particular skill.
Okay.
But when those moments come up, then I sort of take it as it comes. So right now I don't really anticipate a situation like I had before, which is like I see this big hole, I need to go fill it. Now it's more like just smaller things that I can tweak.
Right. Then you mentioned earlier that you took a course on Craftsy. Mm-hmm. What was your experience like with Craftsy? What did you think about the platform and the quality of the course that you took?
I liked it. The quality of the course was actually really good, and it was the instructor was someone whose blog I had followed before, so I was familiar with his work, and it was very helpful. The instructor's name is Don Morin, and it was something I can't remember. He has a couple of courses on there. It was about, I don't know, something about bags.
All right. I'll put a link to Craftsy, and if the course is still available, which I think they usually are, I'll also link to that as well. So if anyone is interested in checking that out, just go to convome.com/retool and the link will be there. Let's talk about pricing your products.
Oh, goody.
Yeah. So what goes into that? How do you determine how much, what the price tag you're going to put on a product is? And does it vary from what you sell, how much you put the price on Etsy as opposed to when you're selling in person?
Pricing for me is a challenge. When I first started ReTool, one of the things, besides being vegan, we also wanted to be affordable. So that has always been sort of in the back of my mind, but at the same time, I'm trying to make a living at this, and I do have my stuff in stores, which means wholesaling. So I try to keep that in mind, and that's 50%. So I need to make sure that 50% of my retail price is enough to make me that I can make a profit off of.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means some of my lower price items I actually don't wholesale because I can't get a good enough profit margin on, but I don't want to raise the retail price. So I've done that for some of the lower priced items.
Okay.
So I take into account the materials costs, and I try to be as complete as possible. So I mentioned before that I buy materials wholesale. That includes thread, and when you buy thread for industrial machines at a wholesale price, you get a pound of thread, which is on a huge spool.
Right.
And so it's like, well, how much of that pound of thread does one wallet make? Well, I don't really know, so I just put in like 5 cents, which I'm sure is actually an overbid, but I'd rather think my materials cost more than they did than underbid on that.
Right.
So every little scrap of anything I use in it, I make sure to include. I actually do time trials once a year to see how long it takes me to make something. So that I'll do, I'll make 3 wallets, time the whole session, and then divide by 3 to get the amount of time it takes me to make a wallet. And so I charge labor, materials, and then profit, on top of that. In addition to keeping in mind what the marketplace is like. So my standard billfold wallet right now is $42, which is mid-range. There are tons of wallets that are more expensive. There are lots of very inexpensive wallets. And my hope is that mine is perceived as a very well-made version at a, not a cheap price, but an appropriate price.
Yeah. I think the pricing is appropriate. And I say that because I was at a store looking for a travel bag. And this was I should give the disclaimer. It was at SFO and everything is like 30 times more than what it should cost or what it would cost outside. But I had just gone through security and then my travel bag snapped off.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I needed to buy something desperately, and there was a vegan luggage store.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost passed out when I saw the prices. So when I saw your prices, I thought, this is so much more reasonable than, you know, like I practically had to carry my stuff in my hands like a baby because I could not, but it was ridiculous. So, yeah. Now, how essential do you think it is for a seller, especially someone who is running a one-person show, to get a seller's permit so they can get wholesale pricing like you do? Do you think it's something people should do right out of the gates, or should they first start selling, make sure that their product gets traction in the market, and then do that? And how did you do it? What was your story?
We did it right away because we wanted to, you know, make sure to be doing what we're supposed to be doing legally. So all of that, well, pretty close to right away. It's so long ago, it's hard to remember. Yeah, we did the whole, registering everything and, all that BOE stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which can be sort of complicated,
mm-hmm.
but fortunately they are very nice on the phone, and help you figure everything out. So we did that pretty early on, and it's really tough because, well, you know, I don't recall exactly how much it is, but it's not a huge amount. It's tax deductible.
Yeah.
So even if, you know, what you thought was a fabulous idea doesn't take off, you know, it's not like you'd be out $5,000.
Right.
So I tend to, you know, err on the side of, you know, doing, you know, making sure I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. And for anyone who's wondering, BOE is the Board of Equalization. That's who you, and every state has their own. So if you open up a business and you need to get a seller's permit so that you can order your supplies at wholesale pricing, which, you know, you can get better deals and then you don't pay tax on them. You go to your Board of Equalization or your franchise tax board. In California, they're together somehow. I don't know how they do it, but they're kind of together. So look at what your own state does. And, yeah. But you're right. In California, it was easy because when I did, they were really, really helpful. Like they really wanted you to get the permit. At least when I did mine, it was like, I felt like they wanted me to be in business. I don't know why. I was like, why, thank you so much.
Yeah. And it's like every time I've had to deal with them on the phone, everybody's been very helpful.
Yeah. Now let's talk about, how you promote your Etsy shop, how you get, what do you do to get traffic in there? What do you do to get people eyeballs in your shop and people excited about what you're selling?
Well, I should admit right off the bat that I am not very good at that part.
Okay. Well, something's working for you.
I still primarily depend on internal Etsy traffic, which I think for me is the next biggest growth phase, is to, you know, not rely on them for traffic. I am on Twitter, but I don't do much at all with that. I have an automated thing set up so that it will tweet new listings, and I occasionally will post a photo. I'm on Instagram, so I'll post pictures of works in progress. I just today posted a photo of a brand new backpack that I'm very excited about. So I have a blog. And what I started doing on my business card that I include with every item that I sell, both on Etsy and in person, I put the link to my blog instead of to my Etsy shop. Mm-hmm. And from the blog, they can, you know, click on shop and it'll take them to the Etsy shop. Okay. But for me, that was an important new way to think about my business, is that my business is my business and Etsy is a part of it. Etsy is not my business.
Right.
So my blog funnels a small amount of traffic to my shop. I'm on Facebook, but we all know how difficult it is to be seen on Facebook. I don't pay for the ads.
Yeah.
There's actually a new thing that I'm super excited about that I don't think I can talk much about. But it's a new marketing thing that is about cause-based marketing that I'm going to be trying out.
Okay.
Cause-based marketing is the idea of like, one example is, Tom's shoes, buy a pair of shoes and we'll give a pair of shoes to someone.
Yeah.
So that idea, which I find super appealing.
Yes.
So.
Okay, well, that just means you're going to come back after you can talk about it and then tell us about it.
Excellent.
Okay, good. So, do you have any plans to start your own e-commerce website at some point, or you're happy with the blog and referring traffic back to your Etsy shop for people who want to buy?
I've been concerned about diversifying for quite some time, and I'd like to find somewhere else to be or other places to be. So I can see, I think I would like to, but right now I don't have the time, energy, resources to devote to doing that. But in an ideal world, yeah, I'd be selling off my own website in addition to Etsy and other places.
Okay. Have you ever considered leaving Etsy and going to some other platform, other than your own e-commerce website, like some other marketplace to sell?
No, for me, at least for now, it would be in addition to and not instead of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how often are you coming up with new product lines, and typically how long does it take you from the time you have the idea for a new product to when you have it actually created and then available for sale?
It can vary widely. Let's see. I've got about probably 6 or 7 credit card holder designs alone. So some of it is, and a bunch of different wallet variations, like a coin pocket wallet or an ID pocket or a wallet with a grommet so you can attach a chain.
What's a grommet?
A grommet is the little metal ring. So there's a hole and the ring is sort of around the hole, if that makes sense. Like in your shoelaces will often have the little metal.
Oh, yes.
So it's a bigger version of that.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes it's sparked by a customer at a show saying, "Hey, do you have a wallet that does this?" And I'll say, "No, I don't, but I can." So there have been a few custom orders that eventually turned into items that are regular ReTool products now.
Okay.
The most recent thing I made is a backpack, and I don't know why, but I had been super resistant to making a seatbelt webbing backpack. I've made myself a couple of backpacks out of nylon that I love, and they're super fancy. They've got a padded back with a little indentation, for where your spine is. So there's the channels, and it's got all sorts of fancy stuff, but I can't sell them because of how long it takes to make them. I would have to charge way more than I'm comfortable charging for it. So finally, it's just like within the past 10 days, maybe I was like, I'm just going to do this seatbelt backpack. So I came up with a design. It's pretty simple for now. It's got a main compartment and then a front pocket, with a zipper, and it's got a flap with 2 little, side release buckles on it.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And it will fit a 13-inch laptop, and you can fit an iPad in the front pocket. So,
does it have padding on the inside for the laptops?
It does not, but the seatbelt webbing itself, it's got a couple layers of seatbelt webbing, which is, sort of cushiony. So it's not like it would be in a nylon bag. It's more substantial than that.
Okay.
So at this point, I can sort of do things a little bit intuitively and say, okay, I think I'll make it this big and let's see if it works out. So that's sort of the first round is, I don't know, I'll just put some of this and some of that and see what happens.
Right.
And it actually turned out pretty close to the final design. And after I do that first round, well, I try to make notes as I'm going, okay, this length webbing, trim to this size and make it this wide and this long. Because if I ever want to make it the same dimensions again, I don't want to have to recreate that. And then after I finish the first round, then I go through and I say, okay, now what would I change? What do I want to be different? Okay, well, this pocket should be an inch deeper. Okay. Next time I'll make it an inch deeper and then reassess. So that's sort of my process.
So that sounds like it takes like a while.
It can. Yeah, it can for sure. And it's sort of a narrowing, you get closer to that goal. And I actually have a little physical description of every product I make that has, cut materials to this size, trim to that size. And, the ones that I did earlier on are much more detailed and in a way that's more helpful to me when I go back and if it's been a while since I've made a particular thing, I might need to go refer to my notes. Because consistency to me is really important. And I think that's one of the things that can make you look much more professional if, all of your wallets are the same size.
Right.
So if I haven't made something in a while, I'll go back and look at those notes. And if my notes are just like finish size, X, I'm like, okay, how do I get there?
Now, Jacob, you do in-person shows. How do you decide which ones you're going to attend? Because I know there's a lot that goes into doing live shows.
There is a lot. There are a ton of work. And I tend to go back and forth from year to year. So when ReTool started, my partner and I, we were like, there's a show. Okay, we'll do it. And that was not the best approach because there were some shows. I don't know that we ever actually lost money, so we always covered our booth fee. But sometimes the booth fee was, $35. In the Bay Area, that is rare. And I tend to do the bigger shows, so where it's a couple $100 for a 2-day show. So I'm more discerning now about which shows I do.
Okay.
And I try to do established shows, and even then, from year to year, it's really hard. I have not been able to predict how well I will do. So I'll have a fabulous year one year, and then the next year will not be as good, and then the year after that will be even better.
Right.
So, and that's, part of the challenges of retail. You just can't depend on anything.
Right.
But my goal is to, make, 4 to 5 times a booth fee at least.
Okay.
And that helps me to make it feel like it was worth it, the 12-hour days and the exhaustion.
Yeah. And so when you set a goal like that, when you're actually there at a show in person, are you just focused on selling till you reach that goal? Like, do you go out of your way to attract more foot traffic to your booth and all that, or do you just hope that it happens?
Well, I am terrible at selling part of it. I'm not an extrovert. I'm very much an introvert. So I'm not the type of person who's going to be like, hey, come wallets for sale. Come get your wallets. That's not me. So it's very, I have to really work up to it. And a couple hours into the day, it's easier for me to approach someone and ask, if they want help with something, or to even if someone picks up a particular style of wallet, to walk up to them and say, hey, here's what I like about this one.
Right.
Or, oh, that's the wallet I carry. Let me show you. So that's a challenge for me. And I think that if I were a little more outgoing, I would probably make a few more sales, but there's also a price to that because shows take a lot physically out of me. They're just exhausting.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a trade-off. And some people get energized by that. I don't. Like after a show, it's like I just need to be alone and
Not talk.
yes.
So what's something about selling on Etsy? One thing that you really enjoy, and then what's one thing, if any, say a new feature that doesn't exist that you would like to see implemented on the platform?
I think the thing that I like the best about Etsy is just the interactions that I get to have with people in other countries. That's really cool. That's a really cool thing. Off the top of my head, a magical feature. Yeah, I don't have a magical feature at the moment.
That's good. That means you're happy. Now, currently, are there any tools or resources that you're using that you're really enjoying and you wouldn't mind sharing?
Particular Etsy features?
No, it can be anything. If a productivity tool, a website that you found helpful, a book that you read that was helpful.
They came out with a shop update thing recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I just started doing that, and that's something that I can see the value of, and I think it's really cool. I've done 2 of them, so it's not, I haven't really explored it, but I like the idea of it, just bringing people into your shop and letting them see the behind the scenes stuff more easily.
Yeah. When you did the ones that you've done, did you see traffic result from that?
Not hugely, no.
Okay. No, I only ask because I've only done one and I didn't see much traffic, but
Right.
then, I don't know how, because, okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, with the Etsy shop update, you're supposed to give like a background, behind the scenes view of what's going on, in your process or in your shop before stuff gets to the shelves. And so you give an update and then you have the ability to announce it on social media. And then it's supposed to help drive traffic to your shop. And maybe I didn't do as much of it as I should have, because when the social media thing came up, I was like, oh, you mean I have to tweet this out or I have to post this on Instagram? Like, who wants to see this? Who wants to hear this? I don't want to be, one of those voices in the, in the middle of everything else saying, oh, look at this. So I only did one tweet and I did one post on Instagram. So maybe you're supposed to do it more often. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I was hesitant.
And I think that maybe it's one of those things, for folks who have large committed followers on particular platforms, then use that platform and speak to those people who are already waiting to hear from you.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't know, I'm not sure how it shows up in the stats. Like, would those views from, say, Instagram, would those show up as direct views? Would those show up as, so it might be harder to tell than we think.
Right. Well, what I used to measure it was, with the shop updates, you can link the
to a particular product.
Right, exactly.
Listing. Yeah.
Right. So I was just looking to see if that particular product had, additional views or, significantly more views than usual because of that. And I didn't see that it did.
But they could also they might not click on that listing, right? They might click on like a shop link or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe.
So there might be, or even on your Twitter profile or whatever, and then get to your shop that way. So
yeah,
I don't know.
or get distracted. It would be nice if we could track actually, yeah, maybe that's something we should ask for. Track the response to the updates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jacob, do you have an Etsy shop shout out that you want to give? Maybe a seller who has helped you or a shop that you've bought from and you really liked what they were selling? Anything?
I do. I would like... There's this really cool artist, and I've gotten a couple of books from him that are just really, really super cool. Creative, imaginative, surreal. The shop name, the guy's name is Theo Ellsworth, and that's his shop name. TheoEllsworth. It's really awesome stuff.
Theo Ellsworth. That's his name and that's the Etsy shop name.
Yep.
Oh, fantastic. So I'll put a link to Theo's shop as well. So if you want to go check it out, again, go to convome.com/retool. And Jacob, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
I guess by email is fine. Email is retoolsf@gmail.com.
Okay. And so I will have a link to Jacob's email. Well, I'll have it in there. So, if you forget, and then also to his Etsy shop as well. It's ReTool SF or ReTool. And, Jacob, thank you so much for talking to me. I really enjoyed the conversation. You're so calm, and I was like, oh, I like it. Not that people aren't calm. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but thank you so much for being my guest and for taking the time out of during this busy time of the year to come and talk to me. I really appreciate it. I know that there are so many other things you could be doing with your time. So I thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it too. So.
Thank you. And I thank you for listening to the podcast, and I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.